Hi, I'm Jack with healthofmyhome.com. We're learning that making houses airtight is really important, not just for energy efficiency, but also as an important step to be able to control the indoor environment, make houses healthier, more comfortable, and resilient. It is quite a complex task. This video is just a general overview of what it is and what it takes. It is also sometimes viewed as a controversial, mostly by the old school construction people who are stuck in the house needs to breathe mentality, and it's definitely something that we can learn and perfect constantly. I've been doing it for a decade now, and recently learned that there are better ways to do it. It was honestly quite a blow to my professional pride, and also I'm grateful to keep on learning and perfecting my craft. When you talk to people in my field, many brought air sealing into almost a religion. I've heard many times people claim that air moving through the house takes away more heat than escapes through insulation. According to my calculations, it's not the case for most houses. But the fact that the two are comparable definitely hints at the importance of this task. And at the end of the day, it's not one or the other. It's really important to do both. Air sealing and insulation go hand in hand and work really well together. So if you're ever hiring a contractor who wants to insulate your attic or floor and don't mention doing air sealing before they start, that's a huge red flag. Air sealing before insulating solves so many problems and actually allows insulation to work properly. Because if air is moving through insulation, insulation is not working. So how do we know how leaky a house is and where it needs to be sealed? We use a device called the blower door to test houses. The way those tests are done is we close all the windows and open all interior doors and then hook up this machine to, let's say, front door, and it blows air out of the house to reach a certain pressure difference between indoor and outdoor, so it's depressurizing the house. When we reach that standard difference, the computer on the blower door is showing us how much air is being blown out. All that air is being replenished by all the holes in a house, since that's the only place where the air now can be coming from. And so the more air is moving through the device, the more holes there are. Also, it magnifies all the air leaks about 20-fold, so we can just walk around the house and feel where the leaks are located with our bare hands, or smoke machines, or infrared camera. Getting this test is highly recommended if you are working to make your house a high-performing home. It will allow you not just know how leaky the house is, but also better locate the leaks and figure out how much need for mechanical ventilation there is. This test is part of pretty much any proper home energy audit. I will remind you again that I strongly advocate every house to get a professional home energy audit. This test is great, yet it has certain limitations. It generally does not quantify where those leaks are located, and location of the leaks is quite important. Let's look at it a bit closer. Remember I mentioned that what drives the air through your home is the temperature difference between the inside and outside. The warm air is pushing up and creates high pressure up by the ceiling and low pressure by the floor. Somewhere in the middle, there might be no pressure difference at all. So a hole in the floor or ceiling might have more air move through it than a bigger hole in the middle. And this is a major reason why our primary focus is to seal the top and the bottom. Second reason, of course, being the fact that by doing it, we cut off the dirtiest sources of air. Next interesting nuance is understanding the difference between sealing on the inside versus the outside. You might have heard the term vapor barrier and air barrier be used when talking about air sealing and making insulation work. Both of them sound kind of similar, but they sure aren't. In this task, we are after creating a vapor barrier. A vapor barrier is something that stops air and water vapor. It's almost not permeable at all. It's important that we have a continuous vapor barrier all around our house, and it should be on the warm side of the house. Here's what I mean by that. If you're up north in a heating climate, meaning much more energy is spent on heating than on cooling, then the warm side is the inside of your house. And so the vapor barrier should ideally be in the drywall on your ceiling and the walls, and on the floor, not on the outside part of the walls, and not under the insulation on the crawl space. Outside is where the air barrier goes. Air barrier is not impenetrable to air. It just slows it down and lets vapor through as well. So it prevents air just being blown through insulation, but lets it dry out if it gets wet for any reason. Tyvek is a common example of an air barrier. We definitely don't want double vapor barrier. That can create issues. In hot climates, vapor barrier goes on the outside. In hot and humid climates, you really want to work with local experts, since messing this up can really get your house in trouble. Okay, what does it actually take to air seal a house? As always in our field, it's something that's so much cheaper and better to do when the house is being built. But that's not the luxury we usually have. Most of the time, we're improving existing houses. Let's look at common scenarios, starting up in the attic and going down to the crawl space. When we are air sealing an attic, the common areas we seal are gaps around wall top plates. As an installer, I'd walk through the house, remembering room layout and wall configuration, and then dig and find the tops of the walls under the insulation. And on each side of those pieces of wood that are top of the wall in the attic is usually a sizable gap that needs to be sealed. It might be surprising to you, but your walls, even the interior ones, work as little chimneys that exhaust warm air into the attic, since they are open into it. And that air comes from your house. Getting to the top plates of the exterior walls in the eaves of your house is really hard because of the sloping roof. Those are best to address if you're replacing the roof and can lift up the plywood from outside. If you do that, don't pass this opportunity to address air sealing and insulation in the eaves. Another option is to have professionals shoot it with 2-part foam. Those areas are really hard to address. If you're building a new house, build it with raised truss construction, so those areas have more space for insulation. Next up is all kinds of penetrations in the ceiling and the top plates. Plumbing, electrical, bath fans, kitchen fan, venting. It's important to seal around all of them. It's also important to make sure all the bath fans and kitchen fan have well-working dampers and are vented to the outside, not into the attic. Next up is there might be some drop soffits. If so, they ideally need to be closed off so you have a continuous ceiling, sealed and insulated on top. Recessed lights. If they are the kind that are rated to come in contact with insulation, you can seal them. If they're not, it might actually be worth replacing them with the ones that are, especially now that we have some great replacement low-profile LED products. Otherwise, you have to build boxes around them, which is probably harder and compromises insulation. If there are chimneys or flues, they usually have holes around them. If they get hot, then fireproof products need to be used. Ideally, those gaps need to be sealed by metal and fireproof caulking. If there are skylets, there are often areas where air is leaking through, especially right where it's connecting to the roof. Attic hatches. They are often really not airtight at all. Adding weather stripping to it is a good idea. Sometimes we see all kinds of other funky things in attic that need to be sealed. Being inventive and creative helps. And before I proceed, here's a little warning. Please watch the video number 13 about the dangers of exposure to asbestos and vermiculite that can be found in the attic before you decide yourself to do any kind of work up in the attic. Let's get over to air sealing the walls now. How do we do it? Most people think about caulking any gaps they can find and putting special gaskets around the outlets when thinking of sealing the walls. And those things might help. But the thing to do is dense pack the walls with insulation. That's how we insulate exterior walls. However, it not only insulates it, it also makes them substantially airtight. When insulation is densely packed into the walls, it almost stops the air movement inside of it. And now onto the crawl spaces. Seal the following. Perimeter gap where the subfloor and the foundation wall meet, all around. All the plumbing penetrations. There is almost a guarantee to be a huge hole under the bathtub. Seal any holes that there might be between the house and the crawl space, and then make sure that the hatch leading to the crawl space is really airtight as well. If you have a wood fireplace, make sure it has a good damper. Most older dampers in fireplaces are either not working well or have huge gaps around them. I'd endorse something called retractable chimney cap to install on top of the chimney and seal it really well. It has a metal string that goes down and can be opened or closed by pulling it inside the fireplace. I would not endorse a product called chimney balloon that you see advertised periodically. One great reminder when working around old brick chimneys though, be extremely careful. They might be super flimsy and fall apart if they did not have a liner inside and the acid and combustion gases has eaten away mortar between the bricks. If you have an attached garage, you want to make sure it has a well-gasketed door leading to the house, and any holes between garage and the house are well sealed. Okay, now we're clear about what needs to be sealed. Next question is, what do we seal it with? And that's a great question. Good industry practice has been using one of these professional foam guns to shoot spray foam into the gaps and seal them that way. However, it turns out it's not the ultimate best way of doing it. At one of our industry conferences, I was watching a presentation by a guy who does nothing but makes houses airtight, and he's taking it to the whole new level. He only uses spray foam if there are large gaps that need to be sealed. After that, he always uses elastometric caulks and tapes. These days we have some amazing products that adhere and stretch like crazy and will stay on there for many decades, even through earthquake, vibrations, and shaking that a house might sustain. That's where foam might be falling short, according to this guy. It might not last as long and develop cracks through vibrations. And I do believe him when he says that. It was hard for me to hear, since there are hundreds of houses that I air sealed with foam. But I have to accept continuous learning and pledge to do my best going further. I've done some testing of caulks that I found in my drawer and would endorse this one. Better caulks do cost significantly more, but they're adhering really well and stay elastic for decades. The tapes that he was talking about here are not your duct tape either, but rather high-performance building tapes, mostly manufactured in Europe. They're quite expensive and not easy to come by. I have this roll of tape by the brand Siga that is certainly quite impressive. Okay, now that the house is air sealed, it's a great idea to repeat the blower door test to make sure it's successful and also to calculate what the mechanical ventilation needs to be set at. In fact, the best way to do air sealing is to have a blower door installed and check throughout the process how it's progressing. And going back to ventilation, let's look at the ventilation strategies in depth, now that we've gotten build it tight part down. Ventilate right is a critical second part of that saying. This was Jack with healthofmyhome.com. Thank you for watching.